hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Share this video, Low Nose Boxing. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. If it wasn't for him, none of this would be possible. Before we talk about boxing, hit me up for that CMOS, man. I have real CMOS. A lot of people have CMOS that's grown inside fish tanks or bathtubs. Thank God I'm blessed to have a plug that actually gets real CMOS from St. Lucia, straight from the ocean. So hit me up for that CMOS. If you got me on Instagram, send me a DM. I deliver, I ship all that. 92 minerals of the honorable CMOS. Keep your body sturdy. Keep your mind intact. So with that being said, the topic at hand is Gervanta Tank Davis. Gervanta Tank Davis, the history of cash cows in boxing. A cash cow in boxing is a fighter who is basically the face of boxing. A fighter that generates the most revenue. A fighter that happens to be the largest pay-per-view star in boxing. The type of fighter that everybody wants to fight. Whether you can beat him or not, you want to fight that fighter because that's going to be a career high payday. Gervanta Davis is the smallest cash cow in the sport, possibly in the history of boxing, to my knowledge, because I don't know it all. But based on my experience, based on my expertise, Gervanta Davis is the smallest cash cow in the sport of boxing. And no way or form am I trying to put Gervanta Davis down by calling him the smallest cash cow in boxing. What I mean by that, in the sport of boxing, throughout the history of boxing, usually the cash cow, which is the face of boxing, is usually a 147-pound welterweight or middleweight or heavyweight, somewhere between welterweight and heavyweight. Usually heavyweight, middleweight, and welterweight. For the most part, those are the cash cows in boxing. It's seldom that you get a fighter under 140 pounds that happens to be the largest draw in boxing, the fighter that headlines pay-per-views after pay-per-views. Based on my knowledge and experience in the sport of boxing, in the early 80s, Sugar Ray Leonard bursted upon the scene, an Olympic gold medalist. Sugar Ray Leonard was the cash cow in boxing during the early 80s. Sugar Ray Leonard was the biggest draw in boxing. He was the original golden boy, right? In the mid 80s, when Sugar Ray Leonard retired and declined, Mike Tyson came onto the scene. Mike Tyson, who was a heavyweight, became the face of boxing, the cash cow, the pay-per-view star. And I forgot to mention, Sugar Ray Leonard was a welterweight, 147-pound fighter who won titles at 147, 154, 160, 168, and of course, light heavyweight, right? When Mike Tyson went to jail, Don King at the time had a large stable of fighters at the time. So when Mike Tyson went to prison, Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. became the cash cow, the face of boxing. He was the big pay-per-view star in boxing, right? When Julio Cesar Chavez started to get older and start to decline, Oscar De La Hoya bursted upon the scene and fought Julio Cesar Chavez, defeated Julio Cesar Chavez, and eventually became the face of boxing. Oscar De La Hoya became the cash cow. Now, Oscar De La Hoya was headlining pay-per-views when he was 135 pounds, but when he moved to 140 and defeated his idol, Julio Cesar Chavez, that's when Oscar De La Hoya basically became the top pay-per-view draw in the sport of boxing. You still had guys that were on pay-per-view like Evander Holyfield, who's a heavyweight, Lennox Lewis, and despite the fact that those heavyweights were on pay-per-view, those guys were not the cash cows that Mike Tyson was. So Oscar De La Hoya was basically carrying the sport of boxing on his shoulders, right? And then when Oscar De La Hoya faced off in that mega event against Pretty Boy Floyd Mayweather, who eventually became Money Mayweather, Floyd Mayweather defeated Oscar De La Hoya. And when he defeated Oscar De La Hoya, Floyd Mayweather became the cash cow of boxing. Mind you, Floyd Mayweather began his career at 130 pounds, which is junior lightweight. But when he beat Oscar De La Hoya, that fight was at 154 pounds, which is junior middleweight. And then Floyd Mayweather, for the most part of his career, competed at 147 pounds as Money Mayweather, and he was the cash cow of boxing. During that time, you had other fighters who were also headlining pay-per-view, such as Miguel Cotto, such as Manny Pacquiao. But Floyd Mayweather was the face of boxing. When Floyd Mayweather had that brief retirement, Manny Pacquiao moved up to 147 pounds and defeated Oscar De La Hoya. When Manny Pacquiao defeated Oscar De La Hoya, his stardom rose to a higher level. Manny Pacquiao became the cash cow of boxing. And eventually, when Floyd Mayweather came out of retirement, both Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather were the two cash cows of boxing. Honorable mention, Miguel Cotto was also doing good pay-per-view numbers. Miguel Cotto also had a very large fan base. Miguel Cotto is a Puerto Rican superstar, and everybody knows in boxing, Puerto Ricans, along with Mexicans, fighters from the UK, and certain American fighters, depending on their charisma, are the cash cows for the most part in boxing. So Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao, they eventually fought each other. Eventually both guys retired, right? And then when Canelo Alvarez fought and defeated Miguel Cotto, Canelo Alvarez took over that mantle as becoming the cash cow of boxing. Canelo Alvarez became the face of boxing. And to this day, he still is the face of boxing. However, Canelo Alvarez is, I wouldn't say he's on the way out, but he basically reached his prime, and he's sort of on the downside. Sort of like Julio Cesar Chavez, right? At the time when Oscar De La Hoya snatched the mantle of becoming the cash cow. Gervanta Davis just had a huge pay-per-view event against Ryan Garcia, which I believe did over 1 million pay-per-view buys. That's something that hasn't been done in quite some time, right? In a little while, it hasn't been done. So Gervanta Davis right now, to me and to many others, is the cash cow of boxing. Gervanta Davis, mind you, is 135 pounds. He's a lightweight. And it's rare that you have fighters at 135 pounds as the face of boxing. The smallest fighter prior to that was Oscar De La Hoya when he was at 140, eventually moved up to middleweight, and Julio Cesar Chavez, who was at 140 at the time when he was the cash cow of boxing. Gervanta Davis' stardom has the potential to grow, because right now Gervanta Davis might be competing in the best era ever at 135. Usually 135 is a division that's a springboard to 147 pounds. You have guys like Sugar Shane Mosley, who started their careers at 135. Oscar De La Hoya was around those weight classes, 130, 135. Roberto Duran, Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather, Pernell Whitaker, all those guys moved up to welterweight, where they eventually made more money and were able to get the mega fights that eluded them in those smaller weight classes. Gervanta Davis is at 135 pounds in a weight class loaded with talent, loaded with potential superstars. You got the undisputed champion at 135, Devin Haney, who's about to fight Lomachenko. Lomachenko is a walking, living legend, right? And then you got El Shakur Stevenson from Newark, New Jersey, possibly, in my opinion, the most skilled fighter in boxing. You got young guns like Frank Martin. You got Isaac Pitbull Cruz, who Gervanta Davis already faced and is rumored to face again in a rematch. You have a ton of fighters in those weight classes. And then at 140, if Gervonta was to move up, you got the winner of Teofimo and Josh Taylor. You got Regis Prograis. You got Subriel Matisse. I mean, so many different possibilities. Gervonta Davis has a nice amount of possible mega fights that he can get into somewhere down the road. And these fighters are all building their legacies around Gervonta Davis. So by the time Gervonta Davis fights these guys, these fights are going to be mega fights. Devin Haney's already fighting Lomachenko. Shakur Stevenson's already making a name for himself, and he may possibly fight the winner of Lomachenko and Devin Haney. You got Josh Taylor and Teofimo Lopez, two fighters that are already tested, two fighters that have already defeated the best fighters out there in boxing. So Gervonta Davis has opponents that can be mega fights. Right now, Canelo Alvarez, he had his big fights with Floyd Mayweather. He had a big fight with Miguel Cotto. He had his big fight with Triple G. He had his big fight with Caleb Plant. Right now, the only mega fight left for Canelo Alvarez that can possibly do 1 million pay-per-view buys, in my opinion, is David Benavidez. So with that being said, Gervonta Davis is right now in a very interesting spot. However, the face of boxing is not always the #1 fighter pound for pound. The #1 fighter in boxing right now, pound for pound, is Terrence Bud Crawford. However, if Gervonta Davis faces the top guys in his division and defeats those guys, he could potentially become the best fighter in boxing, pound for pound. Right now, we're in a very, very competitive and talented era in boxing. So with that being said, it was a pleasure talking boxing with you guys, sharing some knowledge. And once again, hit the like button, share this video, subscribe to my channel, Low Nose Boxing. I'm out.